I stared at the message on my phone, a faint smile tugging at my lips despite the gravity of the situation. Flying to Rome with my lover. Have fun being poor. James's last taunt glowed mockingly on the screen. It was almost too much. Here I was, watching my husband try to escape from the life he had created for himself. And yet, I had been one step ahead the entire time. My name is Natalie, and I never expected to find myself in this situation at 29. Divorce papers, an embezzlement scheme, and now the FBI involved in a chase I had orchestrated from the inside. James thought he was so clever, draining what he believed were our personal accounts. But what he didn't know was that those accounts were just fronts I had set up weeks ago when I first caught wind of his scheming. He had no idea that I had already contacted the authorities, and that every step he took was being monitored by a task force. I should have known. The signs were all there. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the sudden interest in our financial arrangements. But the first real clue came when I discovered the traces of suspicious transfers. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I took my findings to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. That's when Agent Catherine Torres entered our lives. James knew Agent Torres only as Amanda, the gorgeous new client who seemed so interested in both our investment services and him personally. But that was the perfect cover. James never suspected that his every move was being tracked. I parked outside JFK Airport, watching the operation unfold in real time through the feeds on my laptop. Agent Torres spoke through my earpiece. Target is approaching security checkpoint. He's with the female operative now. James was walking confidently through the terminal, arm around the waist of the woman he thought was his mistress. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. He was about to realize that his grand escape was unraveling before him. I couldn't help but feel a mix of triumph and disappointment. The man I married, the one I thought I knew, had betrayed me in ways I never imagined. He had been lying to me for months, and worse, stealing from people who trusted him. Agent Torres continued, "He's likely carrying the backup drive with all the transaction records. Don't let him dump it." I typed a quick response. "I'm with you. I'll make sure he doesn't get away." The plan had been months in the making. James had no idea that the accounts he thought he'd drained were merely decoys. He thought he had pulled off the perfect heist, but I had been watching, preparing for this moment. I clicked over to the surveillance feed, watching James as he kept glancing at his phone. He was nervous now, his steps quickening. It was almost time to end this charade. And then, as I watched, something in his hand caught my eye. My father's vintage leather briefcase, the one I had inherited after his death. The one he had always said was the safest place for important documents. My stomach dropped. James had been carrying it for days now, and I suddenly realized he was using it to transport the backup drive with the evidence of his crimes. I spoke into my mic, keeping my voice steady despite the emotions surging in me. "Agent Torres, he has my father's briefcase. The evidence is in it." "Copy that," came her response. "We're on it." James was oblivious, still strolling through the terminal, checking his phone. His confidence was gone now, replaced by tension as he tried to look relaxed. He had no idea that this was the beginning of the end for him. I watched the feed carefully. The officers were moving into position, and I could see James's smirk faltering as he realized something was wrong. He stopped, looking around, his eyes flicking nervously toward the exits. He was about to bolt, and I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't let that happen. It was time to end this. I typed out one final message to him. "Maybe you should talk to the police officer behind you." His expression changed in an instant. The cocky smirk he had worn all afternoon disappeared, replaced by panic. He turned around, clearly looking for the officer I had mentioned, but there was no one there. He had fallen right into the trap. I could see it now. He was finally realizing that his grand escape had been a lie all along. The agents closed in on him, and within moments, he was surrounded. The woman with him, the one he thought was his accomplice, was actually one of our best undercover agents. It was over for him. I watched as James's face went pale. He tried to fight back, but there was no way out. "James Anderson," one of the agents said, "you're under arrest for embezzlement and corporate fraud." I felt nothing as they led him away in handcuffs. No anger, no triumph, just a quiet sense of finality. I had won. He had lost. But as they led him out, he laughed. It was a strange, hollow laugh, as though he had something up his sleeve. "You really think this is over, Natalie?" he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Check your email. I just sent you something interesting from the corporate server." My heart sank. What was he trying to pull now? I opened my inbox and clicked the folder James had sent. My father's name appeared at the top. Thomas Bennett Project Files. My hands shook as I clicked on the documents inside. As I scrolled through them, my world tilted. There it was. Proof that my father had been involved in the same kind of fraudulent behavior James had been running. But the twist was, James didn't know this. He didn't know that my father had been the whistleblower, not the mastermind. James had used my father's legacy against me, thinking he could manipulate me into a corner. But what he didn't realize was that my father had left me everything I needed to expose him. Every document, every transaction, every name of the people who had forced him into this life of crime. I looked up at Agent Torres, who was watching me carefully. She knew what I was thinking. "This is it," I said, my voice steady. "We have everything." I can feel the weight of everything shifting now. The documents in front of me were more than just pieces of paper. They were the key to everything. My father's name, his legacy, the very thing James had tried to tarnish to save his own skin. The realization that my father had already anticipated the need for these files, for this moment, gave me a sense of peace. But the path ahead wasn't about personal vengeance. It was about exposing the truth, about letting justice unfold in its purest form. I forwarded the files to Agent Torres, my hands steady as I clicked send. She looked over at me with a nod of approval. "This is solid. We can bring everyone down now." The next few hours were a blur. I had always thought of myself as someone who could handle stress, but now I was facing a level of complexity I hadn't imagined before. My phone buzzed with updates, each one more revealing than the last. First, there was word from the FBI that they had already tracked down several of the people involved in the fraud scheme. Then came the bombshell. Daniel and Amanda's plan to flee had failed. They were trapped, their escape plans disintegrating before their eyes. Later, as I sat in the empty conference room with Agent Torres, watching the live feed of James being led away from the airport, the weight of everything I'd been through started to settle in. The tension, the betrayal, the deceit, all of it came flooding back in waves. James was an arrogant man, and he had been sure of his ability to pull one over on me. But as I watched him being escorted by officers, his posture sagging with defeat, I realized that this was no longer just about him. It was about clearing my father's name and making sure the people responsible for destroying lives faced the consequences of their actions. The phone call from my lawyer later that day confirmed the inevitable. Morton and Blake, the company that had built its success on lies and corruption, was facing its downfall. With the evidence I had handed over, the company's executives were exposed, and the truth was coming to light. They were all facing charges, embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. And most of them, like James, were being led into court in handcuffs. It was almost too much to process, the weight of it all. As I walked down the hallway of the office building, I saw my team working, the atmosphere in the office starkly different from what it had been just a few days ago. No longer was there uncertainty hanging in the air. Now, there was a sense of triumph, of something earned. We were building something real, and that mattered more than anything else. Agent Torres approached me later that afternoon, her expression solemn. The investigation into James is still ongoing, but we've gathered enough evidence to secure his conviction, she said. We'll be moving on to the others involved, but we wanted to thank you. Without your help, this could have taken years to uncover. I nodded, trying to absorb everything. The FBI had confirmed the evidence was irrefutable, but even though James had lost, there was still the matter of Amanda. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still out there, hiding in plain sight, somewhere with the stolen funds. But I had to let go for now. There were bigger things at play, things that could change the world for the better. Have you had a chance to look at the new project proposals? Agent Torres asked, changing the subject. The medical AI platform, I mean. It's going to make a huge difference. Her question reminded me why I was here in the first place. I hadn't built this company to avenge my father's name or take down my cheating husband. I had built it because I believed in the power of technology to change lives. That belief hadn't wavered, no matter what had happened. I was determined to see it through. Over the next few months, the company underwent a massive transformation. With the financial chaos behind us, we focused on expanding our AI platform, aiming to make a real difference in medical fields. Hospitals were already using our technology to predict patient outcomes more accurately, and our algorithms were helping climate scientists develop better models for predicting extreme weather events. As I sat in the boardroom presenting our next phase of growth, the door opened and Michael, my lead developer, entered with a broad smile on his face. We just got approval for the clinical trial in 4 new hospitals, he announced, his voice brimming with excitement. I felt a surge of pride. This was what mattered. Not the lies, not the betrayal, but the work we were doing now. It was real, it was impactful, and it had the power to change the world. Later that evening, I sat at my desk, the weight of the past few months still hanging over me. I had successfully navigated a betrayal, exposed corruption, and turned my father's legacy into a force for good. The phone buzzed with a new notification. Another email from the FBI. They had located Amanda, but there was no need to worry about her anymore. Her game was over. As I glanced out of my office window, looking out over the bustling city of Palo Alto, I felt at peace. This was just the beginning. The future was ours to shape. Success wasn't about chasing fast riches or taking shortcuts. It was about building something that would last. My father had known that. Now, I was living it. The last message I sent that night to my team was simple, but it said everything. Let's make this count. Together. As I walked out of the courthouse, the weight of everything that had happened over the past months began to sink in. I had just watched James be led away, his face now marked with the look of someone who knew there was no escape, no more lies to cover up. The years of manipulation, deceit, and betrayal had finally caught up to him. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me as I walked down the steps, the cool evening air hitting my face. My father's name had been cleared, and I had found a way to make sure the truth came to light. But it wasn't the end. Not for me, not for anyone involved. It was just a new beginning. I glanced at my phone, the text from my lawyer confirming that the last of the embezzled funds had been frozen, and the remaining assets tied to James were now being seized by the authorities. Still, I knew that Amanda, the one who had always been lurking in the shadows, was out there somewhere. The stolen millions. She still had them. She had escaped for now, but it was only a matter of time before the authorities would find her. She wasn't as clever as she thought. She never had been. I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would when I saw James's world crumble. There was a hollowness, a quiet ache that lingered. I'd been right about him all along. But that didn't make the truth any easier to bear. The man I had loved for so many years, the man I had trusted, was gone. The person who had once held me close in moments of joy, shared my dreams, and whispered sweet promises now only existed as a symbol of betrayal. But the worst part wasn't losing him. It was that I couldn't even trust myself anymore. I picked up my phone again, scrolling through messages from my team. They had done so much to help me bring this to fruition, to expose the truth, but none of them knew the toll it had taken on me personally. My mind wandered to my father, and how he had been forced into silence, forced to hide the truth of what had been happening under his nose. How could he have lived with that? How could anyone? But at least now, his legacy was safe. His name would be remembered for what it truly was. Honorable, righteous, a man who fought to make things right, even when it cost him everything. I was walking down the street when my phone buzzed again. It was a news alert. The headline screamed at me. FBI closes in on Amanda Martinez, former secretary linked to massive embezzlement scheme. I stopped in my tracks. A wave of relief flooded through me, but it was fleeting. Amanda had always been a step ahead of everyone. She had played the game well, using her charm to deceive others. But the truth was, she had underestimated something I had learned from the very beginning. Money can buy a lot, but it can't buy respect. It can't buy loyalty. And it definitely can't buy the one thing she lacked: honor. She may have gotten away for now, but I was certain that justice would catch up to her, the same way it had with James. In the end, there was no escaping the consequences of your actions, no matter how deep you bury your lies. I went home, sitting on my balcony with a glass of wine in hand. I had earned it. The city spread out before me, the lights twinkling in the distance. It was a new day, and with it came the promise of everything I had fought for. The lesson I had learned was simple. True success isn't about revenge. It's about the long game. It's about creating something meaningful, something that lasts, and having the strength to walk away when the world tries to pull you down. The things that matter most aren't always the easiest to achieve, but they are the most rewarding. I had seen firsthand what happens when people chase after quick fixes, empty promises, and shortcuts. It's a hollow victory, one that will never last. For now, I was content. But I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something much bigger. The story of James and Amanda had ended. But the story of my life, the story of my company, was just getting started. And to anyone watching, to anyone who's ever felt betrayed or underestimated, remember this. The road to success is not always a straight path, but it is worth walking, and you are not alone in it. Keep pushing forward, no matter what. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where you were forced to choose between doing what was right and taking the easy way out? What kept you going? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. Your story matters.